Evil Dead Rise is the latest film in the Evil Dead franchise, and it's about a month away right now. So before we return to this masterpiece of a horror series, I thought we'd take a look at every previous entry and rank them, so we know what to expect. Groovy. Will be. Hi, I'm Oliver the Ricketts, and I love The Evil Dead. You got that? In fact, in my Scream video, I said it was the only other horror franchise that I can think of with no bad entries. Unfortunately, I had forgotten about the 2013 Fede Alvarez reboot, and I wish I had kept forgetting. But the rest of them I like a lot. In fact, Evil Dead 2 is my favorite B-movie of all time. There's so much charm and so much fun to be had with this movie. Evil Dead Rise promises to be a continuation of the main storyline from the original franchise. Although Ash will not appear and Sam Raimi will not be directing. Raimi did pick out the director of this film specifically, and Bruce Campbell is a writer-producer on this project.
I guess you can say I have a hand in it.
And the trailers have just been awesome. It looks like so much fun if you're a horror fan, and I personally cannot wait. And of course the reviews are in, and they have been mostly positive, except for that one guy at South by Southwest.
This movie sucks.
What?
I think that's what happened. What are you doing here? Get out of here.
Seriously, this video is nuts. Imagine being in a room with all the people who made the movie and standing up to tell them that it sucks. But you do have to admire this commitment to telling someone how much you hate something. Although I think the best part of this video is this little zinger at the end.
I don't get it, he waited all the way through the credits.
Just imagine him sitting there steaming. Personally, I hope that I don't feel like this specific movie fan, and I feel more like the people who are saying that this is the goriest, most fun horror movie that they've seen in a long time. That's where I want to be when I walk out of this. But if I'm not, there are still 3 really good Evil Dead movies that I can watch and 2 seasons of a pretty decent TV show. And I'm going to rank all of those entries on a tier list right now.
Hey everyone, real quick before we get into the video, I did want to pop in and remind everybody that we are doing a giveaway on this channel. I'm giving away this really awesome ghost face disc plate that's a metal poster that hangs on your wall. Really nice. I'm a big fan. I did a whole video explaining the rules, but basically all you got to do to be entered for a chance to win is subscribe to the channel and leave a comment on this or any video. I'll be announcing the winner at the end of April. And let's get to it. Evil Dead.
Alright, and starting off our list, we have Evil Dead 1, the original 1983 Evil Dead film, which is of course Sam Raimi's first ever film. And of course that would be very significant to me because Sam Raimi also directed one of my favorite movies of all time.
Pizza time.
Look, is this the most rewatchable film for an outsider who's not already a fan of this franchise? I don't think so. It is dated in a lot of ways, and you have to have an appreciation for very specific things to get into this movie, namely independent film. This is a movie made by just some friends who lived in Detroit who wanted to make a movie, and they made it very cheaply, and sometimes it shows. However, that's also part of what I enjoy about this movie, is the creativity to get around some of the budget restraints that the movie had, and the fact that they succeeded in making a really fun and really scary horror movie. Maybe part of the characters feeling like they don't want to be in a scary house in the woods comes from the crew feeling like they also did not want to be in a scary house in the woods. There's so many interesting little factoids you can look up about this movie, about going over budget, how much time was spent on it, but in the end, you had a cult classic. There's so many fun images from this movie. My personal favorite is the zoom in on Bruce Campbell's eye, and then his girlfriend's eyes, and then his girlfriend is a deadite, and then it's her eyes. And of course, this movie has the tree that decides to have its way with one of the lead characters. It's dark, and maybe it deserved that X rating that it had. That meant it had to go on tour instead of being in a movie theater. In any case, has Evil Dead 1 aged terrifically? No, but it is a classic. And so for these reasons, I'm going to put it in the A tier. Next one.
Evil Dead 2.
Now we're at my favorite Evil Dead movie. It is one of my favorite horror movies next to The Shining, Scream, and Halloween. I put it right up there. It brings in an element that I think that this franchise really needed, which was comedy. Yes, this movie is incredibly gory. Yes, it is still scary, but it's also very funny. A man cuts off his hand while his hand tries to kill him, and then a lamp laughs at him for it. That's humor. That's funny.
That's the kind of humor we do on this show.
Also, absolutely iconic poster. That's really outside of the movie, but I appreciate it. Look at this guy. A lot of people call this an Evil Dead reboot rather than an Evil Dead sequel, but I would point to the title and say, no, this is a sequel that has a recap at the beginning. But definitely a fun little piece of movie history that they had to recap the first movie with different actors because they didn't own the first movie when they made this one. And if Evil Dead 2 is a remake of Evil Dead 1, then that would then make Army of Darkness a remake of Evil Dead 2. And I don't hear anybody saying that, but it does do the same thing where the first 10 minutes of the movie are the previous movie. Anyways, if you skip 10 minutes in, you get to watch it like it's brand new, and that's what I recommend you do. I also think this is the first time that Ash and Bruce Campbell are a real action hero. This is the movie with the chainsaw hand. This is the one where he's coming up with ideas on how to beat the Deadites. He's the John McClane of the series starting in this one.
Go to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Whereas in the last one, he's the final girl. And to me, this is easily the best that the Evil Dead franchise has ever been. And so I'm gonna put Evil Dead 2 in the S tier. And I think it belongs there.
Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness is probably the most controversial, divisive movie in the Evil Dead pantheon. A lot of people love it. A lot of people say that it is the best one. And then a lot of people just hate it because it's not a horror film. And I don't think that I would go that far in either direction. I think that this movie is exactly good. Is it a horror movie? Absolutely not. But it does have two Bruce Campbells and a tiny Bruce Campbell all fighting each other. If you're scared specifically of skeletons, this movie might be scary. But I think that skeletons are just lovely guys that I want to hang out with. I want one in my yard. But look at these skeletons guarding this fort. And it's an interesting thing because I think you can look at Evil Dead and watch the development of Sam Raimi as a filmmaker. The first one, he finds a genre like horror that's cheap to make and you can still do effectively, and he does it really well. And then I think in the second one, he realizes that the line between comedy and horror is actually very thin. A lot of times the best scares in a horror movie would be funny if you set them maybe to different music or played them just a little bit differently. Comedy and horror are so similar. And then in Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness, he's decided he's done with horror and he's much more into comedy. And of course, Sam Raimi always referenced the Three Stooges as one of his big inspirations for all of his films. And you can definitely see that in this movie. It's a silly, good time. I like this movie a lot, and I'm going to put it in the A tier. Okay, the Evil Dead reboot. I don't like this film. It is the one Evil Dead movie that I don't like, which definitely gives me pause about the new film. This is the only one that has nothing to do with Sam Raimi or Bruce Campbell, and you really feel the absence of Bruce Campbell in this movie. Not that I'm saying nobody else could lead an Evil Dead movie, but nobody in this movie is nearly as charismatic or charming as Bruce Campbell is in his Evil Dead films. In fact, this movie is actually very hard to remember once you leave it. It's engaging while you're watching it, but I don't have any standout moments that I think that's a great Evil Dead moment from this film. In fact, the only thing that I really remember without rewatching is the ad campaign that happened around this movie. In 2012, there was a big push to convince everybody that this was the scariest, most frightening movie of all time. A tall order for sure, but in 2012, we really believed it. I was so excited to see this thing because they convinced me that it was going to be something special and a worthy replacement of the original Evil Dead. And I don't think that it's either of those things. I just think that it's very forgettable. Now, what does give me faith in Evil Dead Rise over this one is that Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi were still important in choosing this creative team and still had some input over this movie. I'm hoping that means Evil Dead Rise can maintain the spirit of the original franchise while still being something new and interesting, and maybe this is the reboot that they wanted Evil Dead 2013 to be. Now in the meantime, I'm putting Evil Dead 2013 in my D tier. I hate to do it to him. Maybe if it was not trying to be something that I already loved, I would like it more, and I can see that. Ash versus the Evil Dead. This series is a lot of fun. It's a return to form, literally and figuratively, for this franchise. We revisit Ash at the convenience store where we saw him working in Evil Dead 3.
S-Mart's top of the line. You can find this in the sporting goods department.
But now he's an adult. He's the pathetic adult that we always knew he would be. But he's still great at killing deadites. And that's really all you need for a show. This is such a good blend of comedy and horror with an anti-hero that you can really get behind. In a lot of ways, this show walks so that things like Peacemaker can run. I found the first season to be so engaging. In fact, I watched it all in one sitting. Every single episode, I watched all at the same time. And I didn't even realize that I had watched that much TV until it was over. So I would put Ash versus the Evil Dead in the B tier. And it was just great to see Bruce Campbell do this character again. So folks, that is my ranking of the Evil Dead franchise. Definitely one of the most creative and innovative horror franchises that we have today. And I really hope that Evil Dead Rise lives up to all of the movies on this list, with one exception. If you enjoyed this video and you want to hear my thoughts on other movies, other shows, and other elements of pop culture, definitely consider subscribing and liking this video so that you see things like this more often. Until next time, I'm Oliver the Ricketts, and I have my fingers crossed hard for Evil Dead Rise. The 2013 Fede. His name's Fede. It's a great movie. I couldn't have made it, to me, because oh no.